Don't go after New Orleans. That's a whole different story.
Houston's
it's absolutely
hideous.
beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same place. She's saying swamps and alligators.
No.
Yes.
The
It's the
charm
same
of a
swamp.
cypress swamp is very different than a fucking marshland.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why do they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Chickaboom Ragno.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time, decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get after respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where you play video games, host watch parties, edit this podcast live, and you can watch me lose at Battlefield 2042. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing tonight?
Gene, often when we review movies like time travel movies or disaster films or military fuck yeah movies, I feel very much at home. But tonight, we're going into an area that I don't always feel the most comfortable, and that is the study. Because we are going to be reviewing tonight the modern adaptation of the classic Dickens tale, Great Expectations, for our wonderful listener, Rachel C. So everybody, get ready.
I like that you're equating study with library. I just want to throw that out there. Like, I have a study in my house. You don't have to be quiet in it.
I think listeners everywhere are just imagining Big D with like a pipe and a smoking jacket next to a fireplace, like it's Masterpiece Theater or something.
Yeah.
No, this
We
is
need
like
the music.
This is Gene Lyons reading all of the wonderful shout outs for that wonderful Christmas spectacular.
Yeah, but
Go
he
to
was
our
in a
YouTube
Christmas
channel.
outfit.
Yeah, Gene was in front of a fireplace reading off all of our wonderful listeners early on, and I thought I'd take us back there, Gene.
Oh my goodness. Well, to that, Rachel wrote in and said, "Hi, y'all. I recall Gene mentioning he lived at Marble Arch Apartments in London in the late 90s. Well, my best friend then and my best friend now, Michelle, and I also lived there for a semester in 1998 while we studied abroad at American University. Had many a pint at the King's Arm pub across the street. One weekend we were like, let's go to Germany. The Berlin Film Festival happened to be going on, and we got literally the last 2 tickets to the Great Expectations premiere. They were the worst seats in the house, but we proudly showed our passes at the entrance and even squeezed in a step and repeat on the red carpet. Paparazzi ignored us seconds before the movie started. I acknowledge Great Expectations is deeply flawed, but I have nostalgic love for this movie. I find the cinematography enchanting and love the soundtrack. Plus, I don't recall much discussion of Gwyneth Paltrow or Ethan Hawke on this pod and would find your opinions interesting. Both have polarizing qualities. Ethan seems to have gotten much better in recent years. I adore the Before Sunset trilogy, but feel his acting contributions to it were merely meh. With the talent behind Great Expectations, maybe it could have been a masterpiece. It's not. Still, I find it widely watchable and classically beautiful. So yeah, the character Finn, awesome name by the way, is a terrible artist. But remember, this is not how it actually happened. It's how we remembered it. Thank you for your countless hours of entertainment, Rachel C.
Rachel, Big D, and Ash and I always talk about how it's such a small world with this podcast and how we'll hear from listeners that have these crazy things in common with us. And usually it's somebody saying they're from Texas or they lived in New Orleans or somebody who's from upstate New York or somebody who's in the military. Finally, someone I can relate to. That's so cool that we lived in the same place and drank at the same place and apparently got turned on by the same movie. So thanks so much for commissioning it. Great Expectations is a 1998 film adaptation of Charles Dickens' 1861 novel of the same name, starring Ethan Hawke, Gwyneth Paltrow, Hank Azaria, Robert De Niro, Anne Bancroft, and Chris Cooper. The film is an abridged modernization of the Dickens novel with the location and character names changed. The film received mixed reviews. Ethan Hawke commented on the film's release that it had the bad fortune to overlap with the release of Titanic, which premiered in theaters 6 weeks before Great Expectations. Ethan Hawke said, quote, "Nobody gave a shit about anything but Titanic for about 9 months after." So Big D, Ash, we always ask where you were when you first saw the movie and what your memories are of it. Ash, we'll start with you. What do you remember about Great Expectations?
So I want you to picture this, right? So the year's 98. Like by this point, I am 15 years old. I have adopted black as the only color that I wear by this point in my life. I have embraced all things cynical, nihilistic, dark, but I still like have like this love for love and like especially like star-crossed love stories. And that means that I'm entering very much into a phase that began about a year prior to this, which is everything is about someone like Ethan Hawke. I absolutely loved him. I loved Christian Slater and I loved Ethan Hawke at this point in my life. And I saw this in theaters. And I also rented it a copious amount of times before eventually buying this movie. And I don't know about y'all, but like there's certain films that are linked with like awakenings, sexual awakenings, intellectual awakenings, like all of those, right? And it's when you're getting to know the world around you, the way that life works. And this movie falls into all of those categories for me. And it joins actually a trifecta of Ethan Hawke movies that do just that. As our commissioner mentioned, Before Sunrise, absolutely like sexy, long-haired Ethan Hawke. And then Reality Bites, Ethan Hawke. And this finishes it out with Great Expectations, Ethan Hawke. And so I loved this movie in 98. So I was so excited to go back and visit it, whether we're in the study or we're in the library, whatever it is, I am here for this fucking movie.
So my story with this movie also, oddly enough, starts in the late 90s at Marble Arch Apartments. I just discovered Pulp. I was about everything English. And years later, when YouTube first came out, I found out there were Pulp music videos that I hadn't seen. I'd heard all the songs, but I'd never seen the music videos. And I would go onto YouTube and I would watch this Like a Friend music video just over and over and over again, not realizing that the clips in it were from this movie, Great Expectations, that I hadn't seen. And it didn't look particularly interesting. I just wanted to see Jarvis. I didn't care about this other shit that was going on. So I never got around to watching the movie. When I read for this review that the director called it a complete failed film, I was really worried and wondered why anyone would commission it.
So my history with this film is non-existent. I had a strategy whenever I would go to the wall at Blockbuster and pick a film. It had to be something that spoke to me. In this movie, it had 3 strikes against it. Okay, it is a coming of age adaptation of Dickens classic. Okay, strike 1. Boom. Okay, I got to get over that. Then we go to the cover art. So on the cover, we see Gwyneth Paltrow. Then we see Ethan Hawke a little bit smaller, like over his shoulder. And then De Niro just kind of hovering in some black space. It is a bad Photoshop job. It tells me nothing about the film. It tells me that the people behind this film didn't care about proportions or aspect ratios of what these characters are doing together. And then number 3, Gwyneth Paltrow is in this, and she is absolutely insufferable. I will get into it. She's awful. I will stay away from movies. And there was nothing in this movie that spoke to me.
Do you think she like redeemed herself at all with the Pepper Potts thing in the Avengers movies, at least? Like that kind of brought me back around on Paltrow.
No, not when she's still selling, like, I think it's vagina-scented candles on Goop and talking about steaming her vagina.
Look,
no, she
there's
is still
nothing wrong
pretentious.
with either of those things. They're fine. She's fine.
I think
And this is like
vary.
her heyday. She wasn't insufferable at this time. This is like Shakespeare in Love, Gwyneth Paltrow.
She, my favorite role, you don't say about Pepper Potts, is 7. I like the fact that she's
She gets
murdered.
her head chopped off?
Yes, I can't lie.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, because she's stuck
What's in the
up.
box?
Her husband's working. He's got a shitty job. He's trying to make his way up the chain of the police force. And she's just yap.
He ignores her, but God, Brad Pitt's sexy in that movie. But I don't know. I love her in this phase. I think she's fantastic. She became insufferable later. I'll give you that. When she consciously uncoupled, that's when she became insufferable. But this age of Gwyneth, this is great Gwyneth.
Well, we'll get to all that right after this trailer.
I'm not going to tell the story the way it happened. I'm going to tell it the way I remember it.
She's beautiful, isn't she? But what do you think of her? She'll only break your heart, it's a fact. And even though I warn you, even though I guarantee you that the girl will only hurt you terribly, you'll still pursue her.
Are you with anyone?
I'm here, aren't I?
Being raised by his elder sister Maggie and her boyfriend Joe, assists an escaped convict while playing on a beach and is taken hostage. The convict tries to escape, but the police seize his small boat. The convict hides on a buoy, and the police tow Finn back to land, where Finn sees on the news that the convict was mobster Arthur Lustig. Joe is called to do gardening at Paradiso Perduto, the mansion of the richest woman in Florida, Nora Dinsmore. Finn accompanies Joe and encounters Dinsmore's young niece, Estella. Dinsmore invites Finn to come back and play with Estella, but warns Finn that he will fall in love and have his heart broken.
Okay, so I am self-aware, if not anything else. So I'm going to lean into my everyman caveman persona tonight, because I don't think I'm going to surprise anybody out there when I say I did not read the Dickens novel Great Expectation. I came into this with no expectation, no pun intended. I didn't know where the story was going. I didn't know what was going to happen. So it was a blank slate. So this is a rare thing for me. Normally I come into it. It's a classic. I know what we're going to build to. I know what's going to happen. This, I'm like, all right, let me sit back. And for me, as a newbie to this, I thought it did a beautiful job of telling the story visually. There was limited exposition. I thought that from the point where Finn stumbles upon Arthur in the water and he's been drawing and he gets back to the bolt cutters, we see Joe, we see his sister. I don't know where the movie's going, but I'm interested to see the path that these characters will take.
I'm going to chalk this kindness and this patience on your part, Big D, to maybe it's the familiar environment. They're on the Florida coast. You're like, oh, yeah. It's like
true,
it's like home. I feel because this is a child doing bad sketches and then like these voiceovers. No, this was my biggest pet peeve about this movie. I hate when literary adaptations have the actor do like the I'm reading a profound novel voiceover. This entire opening was pointless with a kid being incredibly fucking stupid around a convict. They didn't need any of this. Start with Finn meeting Estella on the gardening job. Just go from there, save yourself 15 minutes and get to the meat of the story.
Yeah, I got to say I'm with Jean on this one. I think the big thing here is like it's incredibly pretentious whenever you're doing like a classic novel transition to movie to open it up and be like, oh, we're serving to the people who read the classic, and only the people who understand the classic will really understand and appreciate this movie. And it's about as bad as like when they do those things like hint, hint, wink, wink throughout the book to show like, haha, if you didn't read, you won't get this part. And I think that happens a lot, especially in the 90s. Now, there are examples of really great classic lit being transitioned to screen well. I think the modern day Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice is a great adaptation of Austen, where you never had to have read Austen, but yet you get the whole story. The modern day Jane Eyre with Michael Fassbender, that's another great example. All of those I think are great because they cater to the movie. They don't like shove it in your face if you've never read it. Because here's the deal, guys, spoiler alert. Dickens sucks. He's boring. He's hard to read. He's hard to understand. So I don't think you're a caveman for not having read him. I mean, I've read him because I had to, not because I enjoyed the process.
Call me crazy, but Ash, you might be able to correct me on this. I'm pretty sure Dickens got paid by the word on a lot of his writing too. So he was just like, fuck yeah, I'll give you lots of words.
That's why it's a tale of two cities and not one.
So he wasn't paid by the inch? Or by the time it took for him to do, come on, listen, I don't want him to meet at the job because I like the fact that I get to know parents are dead. The sister's tricking. Joe is a stand-up guy. His life, it's going nowhere. So the excitement about meeting Arthur, I bought into that as a dumb kid.
She's not tricking. She's sleeping around.
Oh, I thought it was
she doesn't want to be with him because he's boring.
No, I think she's complaining about their lot in life. I thought she was working.
I mean, if she's tricking, I'd hope she'd have some nicer things.
Right. Or like get money.
I thought maybe she did. We just didn't see that transaction.
No, she's just naked. Well, I will say, despite my nervousness at the start, this movie is exquisite from the moment it opens. So I apologize, Big D. I am not a huge fan of Florida. I think it's kind of like the way it's shot in films is usually either like Wild Things, where it's like just marsh and alligators, or it's shot the way it is in like Magic Mike, where it's like all of Tampa has like an orange sheen to it,
You're
right?
fucking out of
I mean,
control.
it's not necessarily a pretty state. But here, I think the way that like you've got this home that's overgrown with this age and beauty, the way the fishing community is shot, like the way that Finn kind of lives in it, it's beyond beautiful. And you're immediately transported to like something that feels timeless and it feels placeless, which like I need because Florida's gross.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Okay? If people
You
in
got
Florida,
marsh, alligators, and theme parks.
don't ever fucking talk to me about New Orleans again, because you are
Gorgeous.
the same people. Okay,
Whoa.
Beautiful.
If people in Florida were like, "Hey, I got to get me some etouffee. Let's go down onto Bourbon
I'm sorry, are
Street,"
you
it's the
in
same-
Cajun country or New Orleans?
It
Where
is the
are you
same
right
thing.
now?
We are the same swamp people.
Nope.
We are the same mudding, the
Take it,
same
Gene.
exact people.
Get him.
Big D, I was like getting my fucking shotgun off the wall and coming after her with you, thinking you were going to go after Houston. Don't go after New Orleans. That's a whole different
Yeah,
story.
Houston's
it's absolutely
hideous.
beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same place. She's saying swamps and alligators.
No.
Yes,
the
it's the
charm
same
of a
swamp.
cypress swamp is very different than a fucking marshland.
Okay, we don't flood here. Okay, so we got that on you.
Okay, well, at least you can be gay in New Orleans. But I think that if we go back to the film here, I think the reason why it's so beautiful is because then I always forget that Alfonso Cuaron directed this movie, and he's amazing. He's a genius. He creates atmosphere in his movies in a way that other directors do not. I don't know if you guys are a big fan of his work, but Y Tu Mama Tambien is one of my favorite films. It is my favorite film that he's ever directed. And in that movie, he captures Mexico in this exquisite way. It has never been more beautiful than the way that he shoots it. And because of the way he shoots it, desire, want, sex, life, like all of that is covered in these subtle ways, the same way they do here in, Florida.
I just had so many questions about Paradiso Perduto. Like, I get that Dinsmore was left at the altar 26 years ago and she's let it go to shit, but that she's a very wealthy woman, so she can kind of have things the way she wants and be very eccentric. But this place is simultaneously like filled with foliage and insects that are crawling around, but it's totally free. The home is free of pests and like impediments. Nobody's tripping over stuff. Dinsmore and Estella are incredibly well heeled. They look magnificent. Their clothing is spotless, but their home is like filled with dust and just greenery and shit everywhere. Is there electricity? Do they have plumbing? And I'm not complaining here. I'm just kind of dumbfounded. Big D, is this the magic of Florida that you can live both things at once?
No, I'm sorry. The fact that they obviously, after the wedding was called off, that they left everything out there and it still looks like it would have been covered. If I don't cut my grass like every 4 days in the summer, it is up to my knees. This thing would be completely overgrown. You would not see a single piece of furniture in that house.
Right, but the idea here is that she does it yearly, right? Like that's kind of implied that it isn't like this is left over from 40 years ago. It's that she's that traumatized and crazy that she has it like redone every single year. And so it sits there for months, but this isn't like a 30-year-old wedding buffet.
Well, that would make sense.
And getting to the
Florida.
But Dinsmore is really where this movie caught on for me. I've always been charmed by eccentric old ladies with scarves and outrageous makeup and big sunglasses and just their memories of how romantic life once was. Maybe there was that scamp that just won their heart. And Dinsmore is just all of that. And this brilliant move to cast a 65-ish Anne Bancroft brought all that old like Hollywood glitz into the movie. It's the perfect role for her. And to me, this is a performance up there with Buffalo Bill and Baby Jane. I was mesmerized by her every second of this movie. I wanted her to be my crazy aunt.
I totally agree. And I found myself wondering, how lucid was she? because there's moments where you can see she's in there, then moments where she goes completely off the edge and then back. I thought the performance was great, and it made me uncomfortable because I kept thinking, poor little Finn, this kid who's out there on his own. He's running into, escaped convicts. Nobody's really watching over him. His sister, whatever, she doesn't care. Eventually, spoiler alert, leaves him. But that they pawn him off. This is like the Michael Jackson thing that he did, where he would go out with kids with broken homes, would get them, sway them with money. Hey, come play, come hang out. And this is worse. Okay, I thought she was pimping herself out, that she was being a prostitute. But here, she is willingly just saying, hey, go in there. Just do what she wants as long as she pays money. This shit, I felt kind of dirty and sad for Finn.
I don't know. I mean, Michael Jackson, he was fine as long as they were young. Like, she's pretty much like, if you're not useful, get out of here, right? Like, I love the fact that she's like, oh, you can't dance, then leave. I think there's something really fantastic about that. And the moment she gets up and pulls that wallpaper off the wall to give him something to draw on, like, she's so good. She's incredible. And did either of you ever see the documentary Grey Gardens?
I had a girlfriend that was obsessed with Grey Gardens, and she and her friends watched and cackled about it. And I felt left out. So I never got around to it. Should I?
Yeah, so it's fascinating. It's one of the best documentaries that's ever been made. And she reminds me so much of a more sophisticated little Edie, who it had to have been an inspiration for Anne Bancroft in the way that she does this character and how eccentric she is. Because let's come on here, this woman, she's magical. And I would imagine as a child, you would be completely enthralled by someone like this. You would not get enough of them.
So I've been wrestling on how to say this without sounding like an absolute pedophile, speaking of Michael Jackson, but the first kiss between Finn and Estella, it's hot.
Oh, hot.
This is kids kissing, and it's really hot. And I think that we all forget the electricity of the first time. It's like when I think back to who I had a crush on in the 6th or 7th grade, they're still that 12-year-old. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, that registers as hot. But I'm a 42-year-old man, and it's a 12-year-old. And you try to think back to what was hot about that. That's a child, right? But the filmmakers get it. They somehow magically capture it so well here. Finn is just nervously drinking from this elaborate fountain that in itself feels sinful. He's in this home. It's way out of his league. It's kind of like this mystical, magical, forbidden place, and he's drinking out of this water. And then Estella, this child, having planned the seduction, touches tongues with him and shocks him with this kiss. And my breath was caught in my throat. I'm like, fuck, these are children. What's going on with you, man?
Oh, I'm so glad. I thought I was really feeling bad. I was having some guilt. I knew it was coming. You could see it building. And the way it's filmed is gorgeous. The sunlight and the narration. And he goes in, they close up. And I'm like, I cannot think this is at all erotic or seductive, but it is. And I think there is an innocence to it. But then immediately my brain, of course, flipped back. And I'm like, how can they do this? In kids, we saw people objecting to the objectification of kids, that they couldn't use them sexually. Is it legal to get young kids to just tongue on film?
It's a kiss.
Yeah, it's a kiss.
It's a tongue kiss. It's a tongue kiss.
Yeah, okay. It's
a tongue kiss.
No, you're getting old.
You don't
Florida.
think I'm telling you, there is something a bit weird about it.
For the listeners who haven't seen this movie, it's a tongue kiss in the mouth.
Oh, it's like a lapping. It's like two dogs
and
lapping.
And it lasts 2 seconds. I think that we forget as adults how forbidden, before you'd kiss the first person, right? Before you'd French kiss somebody, how forbidden it felt to think about touching someone's tongue with yours. It didn't matter about sex. It didn't matter about them touching your body. That was the first thing that all of us linked to desire, or this forbidden thing that you do with another person. And seeing him feel almost because his reaction where he feels almost like he's done something wrong, but in that moment also I want to do it again. It captures everything about childhood. It doesn't capture necessarily anything sexual. It captures what it's like to be awoken to the fact that the opposite sex, or if you're gay, the same sex, that exists for a reason other than just being there. There's an excitement that comes along with that.
Yeah, the sexual part comes immediately after, when she walks up the stairs It's that's a child. Stop it.
She's beautiful. That little girl, I forgot how beautiful she is. Like, and she looks nothing like Gwyneth Paltrow. Like, that's what's so funny. Like, there's like, they didn't even try, right? Like, there's nothing about her, but she's such a beautiful little girl. She looks like a painting.
I don't know. I think that just shows more about my hatred of Gwyneth Paltrow, because I did project some of my hatred on that child, even though I knew it wasn't her, because she just has that smug look and the way she dismisses Finn. Whatever, I digress. But I want to talk about now the talent that is going to save Finn. It's going to change his life. You know, I am not a painter. I did not go to art school, but I'm pretty confident that I think I could rival what Finn is doing, at least up until he goes to New York. Today, I had a little extra time, so I broke out a couple pencils at my desk. I went and found a good cardstock with a grainy texture, and I did a couple sketches. One was of Estella nude in a hotel room. And these are charcoals I did, Gene. And then one of a person's head showing confusion and fish flying up through it. Do you think that my work, Gene, could I have been in this film with my talent?
See, you're running that dangerous game that I run when I look at like a Picasso. And I'm like, I could do that because I hate modern art. So I'm inclined to agree with you. Yeah, I saw your drawings. They look on par with his, but they dared in this movie to actually show us a distinct style for Finn. Because most movies, they just show you a pretty painting that looks exactly like the person he's painting. He's a coastal kid. He's got no formal training. So what you're saying, Big D, is you, as an adult man, nearly in your 50s, can draw as well as a child. Yes, I believe that.
That's true, but nobody's going to get a gallery spot for me. And here's my issue, and I think Ash can attest to this. The portraits, they have an issue with, again, the eyes and the heads. They look a bit large, like the Bratz dolls. The faces don't fit. It's like when Emma likes to do birthday cards. She starts off and she can't gauge how much of the paper she has left as she goes to the right side. So she'll start off like big, HAPP, and then she says, shit, I'm running out of space. So things get smaller and smaller as the space runs out and it gets crammed into the corner. So I would have rather had something truly abstract, something unique. But they got a kid. It looks like I could have had Emma do the art in this film. And that kept yanking me out every time. Is like, oh, your stuff is wonderful. It's gorgeous. Congratulations.
The movie also does account for that, though, because he has a benefactor. So it could be that his art isn't that good, but he's still, somebody's looking out for him. He's actually not good at all.
Okay, I'll buy that.
I completely disagree. I think the artwork in this movie is absolutely beautiful. This is all done by an Italian artist by the name of Francesco Clementi. I don't know how to say his last name, but he is immensely talented. He does all of this interesting take on like desire and sexuality in a dream landscape. So he plays with proportions of like heads and bodies and nipples and body parts and all of that. And I think there's something really beautiful and dreamlike about his drawings. And that first portrait that he does of Estella and the way that her face is shaped, like I'm obsessed with those square jaws and the watercolors. And I think it's like, perfect. I'd hang him in my house.
My God, this sounds like when you're talking about David Lynch. You're seeing shit that is not there. People, I'm going to do it for charity. When this comes out, I'm going to put up my Estella sketch, my charcoal, and I'm going to auction it off, and it will go to a charity to support some underprivileged artists.
If you could also auction off your rad sketches, that'd be really awesome. I want the bike flip diagram. That'd be great.
I would be happy to do that.
Well, several years pass, and Maggie runs away from home. Joe raises Finn alone. Finn goes to Paradiso Perduto every Saturday and develops into a talented painter. Estella leaves to study in Europe without telling him. 7 years later, a lawyer tells Finn that a gallery owner in New York City wants to show his work. There, he encounters Estella, who is in a relationship with a wealthy businessman, Walter. She poses nude in Finn's apartment and arouses Walter's jealousy. Eventually, Finn and Estella have sex. She tells him she's going to visit her aunt briefly, but will be back for the opening of Finn's show. So this is the first real jump in time we get in the movie. We get a fast forward from Estella and Finn as children to the two of them as teens. And spoiler alert, Estella grows into Gwyneth Paltrow, who Big D hates, and her fashion leaves a lot to be desired in this movie, but her sexuality has never been more powerful. Finn grows into Ethan Hawke, who I expected to be dead sexy in this movie. Listen to the character, a poor painter who grew up on fishing boats. He's from the coast. He should be kind of tanned, have cool hair. Instead, he looks like Simple Jack. His entire outfit. I'm watching these scenes and I'm like fucking drooling. His hands are drifting up her knees and her thighs and her underwear with like a pronounced labia through the underwear. And then bam, it's Ethan Hawke's idiot hair. I felt like I was watching a woman seduce a child who couldn't even give informed consent.
Yeah, you and I went back and forth through Slack over this, and we were talking about, like, why does this not make sense, right? Because, like, this is a hot movie, but he's not hot in it necessarily. And it really is his haircut. There's something, is it a wig? Like, that's what I kept trying to figure out in this scene where he's a teenager, right? Like, it's got to be a wig because it's, like, stunted and weirdly spiky, and it's not good. And somehow it makes the sexiest dude because he is so hot at this time. Look like a total goober.
Besides Ben Stiller, Simple Jack, he looks like Ben Stiller in Something About Mary. The only thing he needed was the braces to be like, hi, how are you? It makes no sense. But obviously, Finn has not heard our podcast. He's not heard my theory that more people, more guys talk themselves out of getting laid than talking themselves into somebody's pants. Finn needs to just do one thing, Gene. Shut the fuck up. Close your mouth. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Estella, she is right there. Your hand is between her legs. She's gyrating. She's right there. You're doing whatever. She's right in your face and all over your fingers. All you have to do is continue, do what you're doing, and just take down her underwear. That's it. Instead, he wants to lessen the odds. He wants to make it a challenge. You could be with anybody. Are you with anyone right now? I'm like, shut up. She is right there. Take off her panties. But regardless, this leads us to the biggest cock block and blue balls we've seen in Shat The Movies history. And it is so bad that I almost feel like Finn deserved it.
What movie are you watching? This is Fast Times at Ridgemont High, man. Like, this is fucking Great Expectations. This feels so real. I've been there. I've been Finn in this situation. There's so much that went into the calculation of how Ethan Hawke was supposed to act in this scene. It's that wanting something for so fucking long that you just don't know what to do when you get there. You're frozen by your place in the world, by her place in the world. And you wrote this story for yourself and you never thought to finish the chapter, right? So the final chapter is what happens when you get there and you don't know because your story ended right before that. In a way, it feels like dying. You're done.
And I think you guys are missing the point here. Like, she was never going to have sex with him. Like, she did this intentionally to fuck with him. Like, it didn't matter how quiet he was. It didn't matter how much she talked. She always was going to walk away. Always.
Yeah. See, a lot of women think they're going to walk away, but then they meet Big D and his quiet ways, and suddenly they're just seduced.
I totally disagree. Later on in the movie, spoiler alert, he says, let's dance. He gets her out there. Her fiance is right there. He takes her outside. He doesn't talk. He doesn't say a word. He grabs her, kisses. They're off, and they make sweet love. So yes.
They're also not 18.
It doesn't matter. She was at her weakest. She didn't have her Jedi strength. She hadn't been trained. Okay. That was the time you go after her.
No,
once she becomes powerful after going to Paris and Europe, now she's like the emperor.
See,
you had to take her down early.
So now we're going to switch around here because this was coming later. This is where the one disservice, because I mean, we're not going to get into book versus movie because I'll explain that in a bit. But this is the one disservice that it does of not following the book is because it is so clear and intentional in the book that her aunt bred her basically to hurt and punish men. Her aunt hated men, and she did this intentionally. And so Estella is this cold woman. She intentionally goes after and is like a man-eater type of a character. And her motives, one of the biggest criticisms of this movie is that her motives, if you're not familiar with the source material, feel kind of like wishy-washy, right? Like, why does she go from here, but she doesn't go from there? And I would argue that as a woman, before you go out in the world and get destroyed by other people, like, you're at your strongest. She has her Jedi strength at 18 years old because she has been bred by her aunt. She's been living at home and she does this to hurt him. And I think she's much weaker when she's older because she has been exposed to the world. She's been quieted by Walter and she wants some of that back. She wants to feel that desire again. So I think it makes perfect sense that she dances with him then. She would have never had sex with him that night.
I think that her confidence is supreme in this scene. And I think it takes a lot of confidence to seduce another person. It's actually something that we kind of avoid as adults. I think it's because we just don't have the confidence we had when we were teenagers. When's the last time somebody seduced you, right? Yeah. Just because you're married doesn't mean you can't be seduced. And she's doing it here and she knows exactly what she's doing. And fuck, I got to tell you, like, had I known, I was actually probably guilty of it, right? It was the knowing somebody wanted to fuck you was way better than fucking a person. Being able to know they wanted to fuck you and walking away, that was a high. And I exhibited that shit. I don't want to say all the time, but in Big D's defense, sometimes they got through my wily ways. And my punishment was sex. Anyway, after Gwyneth Paltrow tells him to kick rocks, or doesn't even tell him to kick rocks, she just leaves off for school. We get to Finn going hard into the boat scene, right? He's like, I'm done with painting and I'm done with women and I'm going to go stab fish. And we get Tori Amos in the soundtrack, and two artists that deserve to be on every soundtrack ever are Tori Amos and Pulp. They're just great for movies. And both Tori Amos and Pulp actually wrote songs specifically for Great Expectations, or more accurately was Jarvis Cocker. He worked with the film's composer, Patrick Doyle, to write the song Like a Friend, which is one of my favorite Pulp songs. That was my personal anthem as I navigated so many nights sleeping with women that I connected with deeply. And those women invariably aspired to relationships with guys who were more popular or more masculine or more affluent or more talented. I just got to have them that one time and then was left behind. And I feel that song, and to see it paired expertly with that scene where Estella is posing nude in Finn's rundown apartment, it was just so perfectly Pulp. This is the music video that needed to be made. And there's just something so undeniably erotic about that scene that they set up with the threadbare carpets, the look but don't touch dynamics, and just that studio apartment where everything is in one room and there is no privacy.
Yeah, I mean, in 98, obviously the most famous painting scene is Titanic at this point. It has just come out. She's painted like one of the French girls. Everybody thinks it's so hot because she's naked with that big old blue diamond. Everybody gets all excited. And here's the thing. No shame. Leo with his little hair falling over his eye, super sexy. And Kate Winslet looks fantastic in that movie. Nobody can deny that. But I don't think that scene can come anywhere near close to touching the eroticism of this one. I think that the chemistry between Paltrow and Hawke here and these two characters and that tension between them, this is where it's most beautifully captured through the whole film. And I know, Gene, you're talking about the use of the music, which I think is great, but it's also the way the scene is set, the lighting, the feeling that like they're doing something that's private, but we know it's going to become public. That's the intention of it. The way he draws her, the way like he viscerally like captures the curves of her body, the way he like shades her nipples with his finger, even though he's not touching her, he's just touching the drawing. It's one of the hottest scenes of anything that we've ever touched on this podcast. And he doesn't lay a finger on her. She's just there in the room. And it reminds you of those moments like of your youth. And I don't know if like you guys are there. Maybe it's different. God, I don't want to make it about this. Maybe it's like different, like once you become a mom and like your body feels just very different after you have kids. But like there's this thing that happens in your youth when you're in your, like your sexual prime, you look the best, and that confidence to just walk around naked like that and know what you're doing just by walking around like that. Like she captures that moment in time of like your early to mid to late 20s so beautifully. And I thought it was hot as a teenager, but as an adult, I'm like completely blown away by every part of the scene.
See, and I don't want this to come across as that I'm saying that Gwyneth Paltrow is not as attractive as Kate Winslet, but Kate Winslet, there you can feel her excitement. She's into it. She's becoming aroused. Gwyneth Paltrow is like a piece of cardboard. She's like a
No.
wet towel who's
No.
she's faking this engagement and this excitement in this counter.
There are 3 points in this scene distinctly where she is just firing on all sexual cylinders. There's when she's out of focus near the window and you can see her silhouette. It's incredible. When she has her legs crossed and brought up to her chest while she's sitting in the chair and smoking that cigarette. Fuck me. Like we've done over 300 movies on this podcast, from the peak sexuality that was known as Tequila Sunrise to this. And I got to tell you that this was the first one that actually got my blood pumping. I was like, I want to be in that room. I have been in that room. It's incredible.
Was I hallucinating? Was there a part where she's standing naked in front of the window and there's a young child and the parent across the way? And again, maybe I'm just letting my hatred of Gwyneth Paltrow sneak into this, and that I find her unattractive. I find her, and I don't know where it comes from. Because
How
if you don't know,
find her unattractive in that green silk blouse when she takes it off and she's got that great black underwear underneath it?
It's that stupid look on her face. I think that's what I don't like.
Gosh,
it's like
she's so hot.
Listen. I think she's vapid. I think she is insufferable, and I'm not alone. You know who else does? Her dad. Her
dad's
dad
dead.
said I know he is, but there was an interview where he famously said she's an asshole. And he went and told her she was an asshole. She came from Hollywood American royalty. She was given her career on a silver platter with a silver spoon in her mouth. And the dad said, hey, you're a bit of an asshole. You got your thumb up your ass. You better get back in to what made you want to act. And she admitted that she was a little out there early on in her career, and she claims to have grown. Maybe I need to give her a chance, but I'm going to read you here a couple Gwyneth Paltrow quotes, and you have to pick out which one you think might be fake. Okay, you ready? Here's the first one. I'd rather be smoking crack than eating cheese from a tin. Number 2, I am who I am. I can't pretend to be somebody who only makes $25,000 a year. Number 3, I'd rather die than let my kids eat cup of soup. 4, I fly all the time, like all the time. I've gotten really good at it. 5, we're human beings and the sun is the sun. How can it be bad for you? Okay, any of those ring that might... Oh, and then also I already spoiled the, hey, let's steam your vagina. It's good for you. Any of those think... which one do you think was not her?
I mean, I just want to
They're all her. They're all her.
Right, but I just want to point out, like, you don't have a vagina, so like you don't get to say if they should steam it or not. Like that's something a lot of women do. She just happens to talk about it.
I've read the book Come As You Are, and I just want to know, is it technically steaming your vulva, or are you getting the steam all the way up in her?
Well, I mean, it depends on what type, but like it's actually something a lot of women do in menopause to like balance their hormones naturally. Like that's something that they do all over the world. Now, is she weird? Yes, but do I fucking love her Goop shows on Netflix? Abso-fucking-lutely, because they're insanely amazing. Is she insufferable? Is she out of touch? Sure, of course she is, but who the fuck in Hollywood isn't?
At the risk of being insufferable and out of touch, what is a Goop show?
That's her company, Goop.
Yeah, with the vagina-scented candles.
Right. Well, and I don't even know really what that smells like because everybody's vagina smells differently, right? But like, you know, I think she's weird for sure, but I don't know. I don't think she's as awful as you're making.
All it sounds like to me is Big D is making the case that Gwyneth Paltrow is Estelle.
Yeah, this is her bio.
That's
totally
great.
Agree.
That's great.
I totally agree.
Are you telling me you wouldn't hit it?
I didn't say that. These are very different things. That's a.
So she's manipulative. She's stuck up. She's vapid. She's insufferable. She talks about steaming her vagina. Her dad died thinking she was an asshole. Would you hit it?
I'll take the fifth on that one.
All right.
Every person would.
Stella doesn't show up to the gallery, but Uncle Joe does and inadvertently embarrasses Finn with his crudeness. Finn goes to Estella's home in New York and finds Miss Dinsmore, who reveals that she came to New York to attend Estella's wedding to Walter. She then tells Finn Estella was using him to convince Walter to marry her. Back at his studio, Finn finds a strange bearded man wanting to see him. The mobster, Arthur Lustig. Finn is first incredulous, then uncomfortable with Arthur's presence. Then he realizes that Arthur, not the wealthy Miss Dinsmore, has in fact been his benefactor during the entire time in New York. Finn goes with Arthur to the subway station.
So I can't go any further in this podcast without pointing out the most egregious injustice in this film is Joe. Joe needs some justice. Joe, who is a simple man, he's a fisherman. He's overcome a lot in his life. He was always there for Finn. He shows up at the gallery in the tux that he rented. He slept in his car. He made the way all the way up there from the panhandle. God only knows how. And did he embarrass Finn? Maybe. But Finn has embraced this mystique about the fisherman from down south who's now taking on the New York art scene. Did Joe do anything wrong? Should you turn your back on him? He deserved better. He tells him he's proud of him. He took care of him when nobody else did. And I just found myself really wishing that Joe would have gotten the respect and love he deserved.
Now, technically, Finn tried to get him to come back in. It's not like he told him to leave. Joe decided to leave on his own. But I was shocked that Finn didn't insist that he stay, follow him down the street, talk him into staying, or just leave with Joe.
Yeah.
Like, you were going to leave anyway. We see seconds later that you're rushing to Estella's house with your bottle of booze. Why not just go after Joe? And then we discover, this is the worst part, is that it seems like he didn't keep in touch with Joe the next day while he was still in New York, or the next week, or the next fucking year. Finn shows up years later in Florida. And he's like, oh shit, you have a wife and kid? Sorry I didn't send you any of my millions of dollars while I was busy buying leisure suits in France.
Yeah, this part of this movie always completely breaks my heart. And I think we got to give a shout out to Chris Cooper here. This is the height of Chris Cooper's career, where he would find himself in like every movie at this time. Have already covered him in American Beauty, but he was in a lot of other films. I personally absolutely love him in Adaptation. I think he is so good in that movie. And here I think he's really powerful, and he brings like such a tragedy and a connection to this poor place that Finn used to live. And a lot of people do this. They move on, and the people that protected them and loved them, they just embarrass them because they become this new creature that they think is better than all of that. I think this is so realistic about how someone would react to something like that. And the scene in the art gallery, it's one of the best scenes in the movie because it's just, you've got Chris Cooper being this amazing character actor.
Apparently it wasn't distinct enough for me, because all I could think of is what you would get if you took like Jerry Lewis and then put him on the set of Blood In, Blood Out in the art gallery scene. Like, whoa, like he's this man that shows up at the New York art gallery. Nothing like the father figure that we met in Florida. It's like a totally different fucking guy shows up. He's loud. He's flailing. He's wearing that silly tuxedo. No grown man would think that tuxedo was normal for showing up to an art gallery. It's so over the top that I can't take the tragic part of the performance seriously. When he's going across the street, I expected him to get like hit by a bus. It was like Mustafa and Austin Powers, like, Finn, I'm still here, but now I'm across the street and I'm going to leave now. And then like the bus goes by, still here in New York with nowhere to eat but McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way this man could have survived on his own. It's cringe. But Gene, you mentioned earlier on how much you love the score, and the score is great. It's all working for me until we get to this part of the movie when everything goes off the rails. He now goes running out. He's going to go down there. He's going to find Estella, and he starts screaming, I'm wildly successful. I'm rich. And the score is swelling, and it is something I could not put my finger on. It is so cheesy. Only thing I can think of was Tom Cruise jumping on Oprah's couch, jumping up and down, up and down. It was so bad, and it can only be made worse by he goes in and he takes her hand and he puts it on his chest and says, what do you feel? And I half wanted her to say a boob, going back to the beginning, but no, it's my heart and it's broke.
Earlier in the movie, we get this insanely hot scene where he rushes into that Chinese restaurant, and Estella is at dinner with Walter with some other people, and he walks in out of the rain. He's just soaking wet, and everyone's trying to be cordial to him, and he just asks her to dance, and they just dance a little bit, breaking every fucking convention that's socially acceptable. It's so sexy. They go out in the rain. They have that kiss, and I'm like, this is an absolute reversal of that scene. It's still Finn. He's rushing somewhere, but the narration, it's laughable. That proclamation, like you said, Big D, I am a wild success. It's fucking corny. And I understand what he's going for. I know what Ethan Hawke is trying to do here. He is trying to rip off all those layers of sophistication again and reveal some sort of like Heathcliffian single purpose that's madly driven by a woman who isn't even there. The concept is good. The execution, awful. Waiting for a train, Lustig sees three unsavory acquaintances on the opposite platform. Finn and Lustig outmaneuver them to get on a train. They think they're safe, but one of the men comes through the car and brutally stabs Lustig. As he bleeds to death in Finn's arms, he reveals that he has been Finn's benefactor in return for the kindness Finn showed him as a child.
So there are a lot of differences, as I've already mentioned, between the book and the movie. And there's just like way too much. We could do a whole podcast on that. And because of that, there's a lot of people who are book purists who like absolutely despise this film. A very good friend of mine told her we were doing this and she's like, ugh, it's awful, because she teaches classic literature. So like she loves Dickens and she thinks this is an abomination. But if you want to know just a couple of them, well, first, like in the book, it's not Finn, it's Pip. And so for those of you out there, spoiler alert, I did not name my son Finnegan because of this movie. He's Finnegan. We call him Finn. He's named after a book called Finnegan's Wake, which does not make me any less gross and into literature. But it's not because of this film, because in the book, he's Pip. He's also not a gentleman in London learning how to be a gentleman there. He's becoming an artist, in New York City. And the book also doesn't focus as much on this love story. It isn't as big of a piece of the book as it is here, like where it's the central story between Finn and Estella. But the only thing that really feels like originally Dickens about this movie is what they do with the convict. And Robert De Niro is absolutely doing everything he can to play this convict the way that Dickens wrote him. And I think that that's great that there is a thread, at least that we see him there. But if you've not read the book, back to your point, Big D, this is not a movie that is based on a book. This is really a movie that's inspired by a story that's told within a book. But it is nice to have this little moment with, a fairly still young De Niro.
Yeah, he looks powerful. Like I liked seeing a pre-Fockers De Niro when he was physically substantial, when he could be believed as intimidating. As a convict at the beginning of the movie, I'm like, fuck, okay, yeah, he's kind of scary. But there's a difference between the book and the movie that I would have liked to seen, which is cutting Lustig out of the movie entirely. Just tell me the one story. De Niro is acting in an entirely different movie from Ethan Hawke and Gwyneth Paltrow. And there are literally scenes like when they reunite where Ethan Hawke is just staring at Robert De Niro like he has no idea what to do with himself with this like gangster that looks like a rabbi.
But I mean, this is when De Niro still cared. The beginning, that is Cape Fear. That is, he's unhinged. You don't know what he's capable of doing. I found myself wondering, is he going to kill Finn? Is he going to let him survive? Is he going to take him with him? Is he going to, you don't know what he's capable of. And then even later on, when he's a bit older, there is still something that I couldn't tell. Was he angry that Finn didn't help him escape, that he somehow let him be caught? But no, guess what? The spoiler was in the poster. I knew that when I saw De Niro as one of the three floating heads in the Black Sea of Photoshop madness, that it wasn't Anne Bancroft. I knew, guess what? There's our benefactor. Who's coming back? So I'm not surprised. I'm not a book reader, so I should have been like, wow, didn't see that coming. But guess what? You put him on the poster. I know he's there for something.
Hold on. You considered this the big plot twist? Like this was the secret they were trying to keep?
What else is the twist? Oh, that they're going to fall for each other in the end.
Why does it have to have a twist at all? It's not a mystery. This is not the fucking usual suspects.
Okay, here's what I mean. Is that, okay, he has the encounter with him. He's caught by the police. Then we see on TV the close-up, foreboding on him, foreshadowing and that's the last I ever saw of him. We hear out of Finn's mouth that that's the last he had seen him, maybe at that point, but they're letting us believe that was a chapter in his life that kids have, where they touch the edge of danger, things of the real adult world. So they're leading us to believe that he's gone for good, he's in jail, and we'll never see him again.
But you're complaining about the movie poster. Like, did Titanic shock you when you're like, wait, they get together? And they're like, why didn't they show the boat? I mean, the boat's going to fucking wreck. The
no,
the
it's
boat
okay, Gene. There's no iceberg on the poster. That's why it was still a plot twist. Like, listen, they didn't have it as a floating head in the background that wasn't going toward the iceberg.
There was no mystery of what sank it. We know what sank it. For me, not a book reader, I didn't know that Arthur was going to come back. Don't put him on the poster. Put Anne Bancroft. She deserved it.
Devastated, Finn drops everything, goes to Paris to study art, and becomes successful. He returns to Florida to visit his Uncle Joe. Miss Dinsmore has died, but he visits her house anyway. Sitting in the garden, Finn thinks he sees an apparition of Estella as a child. Following the little girl through to the back dock, he finds her mother, who turns out to be Estella, now divorced. She admits she has often thought of him and asks him to forgive her, which he does. They hold hands, looking out over the sea.
All right, so let me just say, I mean, I'm fine with the end of this movie. I like it. I like the fact that it's ambiguous. We know that these two are just going to fuck each other over again and again and again. These are the types of love stories I love, right? It's why I love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Love hurts. I also love the fact that it's set back at the beginning and she's got a daughter and she's divorced. I mean, all that's fine. But can we pause and can we recognize that perhaps the greatest travesty of costuming ever happens at the end of this movie? Because Ethan Hawke comes out in that fucking suit. And so we're supposed to believe that he goes to Paris, he becomes cultured, he becomes a millionaire successful artist, and that he comes back home and he chooses this to wear. He chooses this Miami Vice silky leisure suit Larry with these flippy floppies to walk through and remember his childhood obsession. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I am completely taken out of the scene every time I watch the end of this movie because of his outfit. And I know we don't give costumes wipe scores, but the costume department deserves all the wipes for this choice.
I fucking do. As a man who refused to wear sandals of any sort until he realized they're an integral part of BJJ culture, I am glad to know, Ash, I wasn't being hypersensitive when I stopped the movie and just said, oh, hell no. I'm surprised you liked the ending because the final half hour, it all felt ad-libbed to me. It's like they ran out of script and the production staff just told the actors, hey, like, we're going to go. You guys just shut off the lights on your way out. De Niro was like, Finn, little Finn, Finny boy, I'm proud. And then Finn and Estella on the dock, their like final conversations like, you come here often? No. You? No, exactly. I really don't. Oh, your kid's beautiful. Oh, okay. Water.
I'm
glad you liked it, Ash.
So bad. Please tell me, in the book, does Finn break her heart? Does he get revenge at least?
No.
Ugh.
No, you're thinking of Wuthering Heights, which is amazing.
Oh my God, Wuthering Heights is the best.
Heathcliff,
and
outside
Kevin,
your window.
They're amazing and deserve each other.
I'll take a hard pass.
Kathy, I've come home. All right, now is the time of the movie where we give our wipe score for Great Expectations. Our wipe score tells you how many wipes this movie takes to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is getting a New York gallery showing without one lesson. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It is going on a Paris shopping spree and forgetting to buy real shoes. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Great Expectations?
If you've been listening to this podcast, you're not going to expect this. I can't explain this, okay? I enjoyed it. I don't know it because I don't. Even now, I'm grappling with this. It was entertaining. Maybe it was because it was kind of like a paint your own adventure. Like I didn't know where I was going. This was a dark road. I was going to choose my own fate, where it could lead me. I thought it was beautiful. Maybe I did kind of enjoy also the local backdrop of the harsh, horrible swamp and cypress trees that are in my backyard. Ashley, I enjoyed it. I thought the performances were good, with the exception of the bad hair. Gwyneth Paltrow as a bioflick, beautiful. She was born to play this role, and I strangely enjoyed it. 1.25 wipes for me.
Wow. I just love that. I feel like we watched this movie and thought it was 2 completely different genres. Because like for you, it was like this winding road of mystery. It's just a dramatic love story.
When Big D said choose your own adventure, I imagine with the remote just skipping chapters.
Right. Like the Minecraft
when you put the movie this way, it's genius.
Right. Minecraft shit on Netflix. Like, where's Minecraft Steve gonna go today? So I'm with you though. Like I loved it. I was very excited because a lot of films from this time don't necessarily hold up because it was an extravagant time. They did a lot. Like you're talking about the Photoshop. Like I think that is indicative of what a lot of filmmaking looked like from this time period. And it looks gross when we watch it today. Like it isn't visually appealing. It isn't like there's nothing aesthetically about it that looks real anymore. It looks almost cartoonish, but this one didn't. It really held up for me. I do agree it's got flaws, but the atmosphere of this film is what gets me every time. This has such a thick atmosphere about it that just brings me in, and I love it. And I don't think it's because of Dickens, because again, I am not a Dickens fan at all. I'm not. I don't enjoy his writing, but damn if this love story is not just nihilistic enough to hook me. It's sexy, it's hot, it's fun in a way that a lot of movies aren't, because it allows itself to just be this story about two people who aren't meant to be together, but just might be anyway. And so for me, I would love if someone would commission Before Sunrise or Reality Bites, because those two films I think are better Ethan Hawke entries. But for this one, I'm going to go 1.5 wipes.
In the weird way that Big D seemed to hate this movie throughout the review and then gave it 1.25 wipes, I feel like I seem to love this movie throughout the review, but I'm landing at 3 wipes. And let me explain. In its exploration of sexuality, this movie is genius. It feels like a film version of Pulp's music, and it made me feel like another movie that I love, Edward Scissorhands, that I always thought was very romantic and very magical. Edward Scissorhands is more like the fucking Decemberists, right? Just a little too jaunty, completely devoid of eroticism. Danny Elfman doesn't do sex very well. This movie does sex very well. And it's also more romantic than Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which I didn't think was a thing until I just watched Romeo and Juliet recently, and this tops it by far. It really tapped into my personal vices, like women who had more money than I did and treated me like this secret lover they'd never acknowledge in public. Like I felt what Finn was feeling throughout this movie, but that was like the middle of this Oreo cookie. And the beginning and the end, the top and the bottom, just a mess. Awful costuming. That Lustig storyline just did not hit, didn't need to be there at all. Wasted a lot of time. And like you said, Big D, there were just moments when Ethan Hawke was giving it everything and it wasn't landing at all. So for me, this is going to be 3 wipes. So 3 wipes from me, 1.5 wipes from Ash, 1.25 wipes from Big D. That gives us an average wipe score of 1.916 repeating wipes for Great Expectations.
So, Gene, that now ties this in the 134 spot with only one other movie, Detroit Rock City. This is slightly better than Purple Rain and Tombstone. I apologize about Purple Rain. That was me. And slightly worse than First Blood, Cannonball Run, and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Something happened while I was out of the country, man. What the fuck is going on here?
I don't think we're going to be invited back to the study.
All right. What's coming up next week?
Gene, next week, cowboy Caleb Colton meets gorgeous May at a bar, and the two have an immediate attraction. But when May turns out to be a vampire and bites Caleb on the neck, their relationship gets complicated. Wrecked by a craving for human blood, Caleb is forced to leave his family and ride with May and her gang of vampires, including the evil Severin. Along the way, Caleb must decide between his new love, May, and the love of his family. Commissioned by Mike F., released in 1987. And Gene, I'm glad you're here for another vampire flick, because I don't feel that I'm capable of doing this alone. Oh, Ash, you too.
Wow.
I meant to
try that again.
I mean, that felt personal.
What I meant was I kept thinking about Gene being brought on as a vampire expert. You were brought on because of just a wonderful, wonderful
I have
human
a vagina.
I was going to say you're a wonderful human being. You're the heart of the podcast.
Steamy vagina.
And so next week, I'm glad that we have both of you, our vampire experts, to help us navigate the bloody water that is everything vampires.
I think you should do that again. That was even worse.
No, I thought that was good.
Bloody water?
Yes, that was good. It was good.
It stays in.
Yes. And next week, I'm glad that we have both of you, like the Frog Brothers, who are going to help us navigate the world of vampires like no one else.
Okay.
Maybe stick to drawing, Big D. All right. Well, thank you, Mike, for the upcoming vampire flick. Thank you, Rachel, for commissioning Great Expectations. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. Email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatpod.com, where you can find ash-scented candles. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Separate your head from your shoulders.
Do it fast.
All right.
The time's roll. Woo! No! You might as well just kill me then, too.
Caleb Colton no longer belongs to our world.
We'll give him a week to see if we can call him one of us.
He belongs to hers.
But you have to learn to kill.
He belongs to theirs.
I want to kill.
He makes you kill tonight.
And they all belong to the night.
It's 3 hours short for a bus ticket home. You help me out?
What are you on?
Believe me, I told you.
Just don't think of it as killing.
Amen.
Don't think at all. It's just something that you do night after night. It's only ever a question of how.
Nervous. I would be too if I were you. Near dark.
It'll be your boys falling in with control.
Check out time.
Bought yourself some time, son.
God damn, it's my family. Let him go.
Near dark. Pray for daylight. The night has its price.
Do we need a disclaimer saying we do not support steaming your vagina? That could be dangerous.
I think, hey, whatever helps.
Yeah, but this
Get
could be
that
like a
thing- get it
McDonald's
steamy.
hot coffee thing. This could definitely hurt somebody.
No, it's actually a really good thing for you to do. It's very good for the pH. It's very good for your health. It's something that a lot of women do regularly. Like, it's a very normal
Would it help
thing to
Gene and I with the elasticity of our scrotums?
I don't need any
do. I
help
mean,
there.
I was about to say, do you have a problem with the
No,
elasticity of your scrotum?
Just to tighten them up, make them more appealing.
I mean, is yours like really saggy?
No, but I think a supple sack is always better than...
Yeah, but like I'm worried now that you have a saggy sack.
No, it's not saggy. I'm talking about just the firmness, just the texture of it.
But like, why is it not firm?
I didn't.
Well,
say
I think
it
what
wasn't
he's
firm.
saying
I'm
is like to avoid tears and such. If you were to snag it on something,
I don't think that's what he's
Steam
saying
it.
at all.
it's got.
I'm
great
saying I just want
elasticity.
to. I just want to take care of it.
No, it would not, because you have a very different. I mean, the scrotum is very different than the vagina, right? Like it's a.
Oh, the
it's a
labia
different-
and the scrotum are the same material.
They are, but you're not steaming necessarily the labia.
I read that in a book called
Come as you are.
"Come as You Are" by Dr. Nagoski.
Mm.
About
All
anal
right, you
bleaching.
vulvas.
Anal bleaching, is that okay, or is it a?
I mean, I know a lot of people who do anal bleach.
Like, do perform it or get it done?
Like, I know a bunch of people get it done.
Oh, I just want to find a place where they just do body hair grooming. I think that'd be a nice service.
Like, you want it to be groomed or removed?
Like, get somebody who would like take care of like your crack and your above your butt crack and your gooch.
Like, take care of it, like as in comb it or get rid of it?
No, like get rid of it.
Well, that's
but not a laser.
You get a
no.
Manzini.
Like, why don't you get it waxed?
Like, because I can't have a lady do it because I would feel gross.
Why?
And I
That's
don't
what
know
they
you
do.
don't want me to do
you,
it.
you kidding me? He looks like Teen Wolf.
Yeah, it's
Can you
bad.
imagine
I know,
what he
but
looks
like I get wax and a lady does it.
Yeah, I would do if a dude were doing it, I'd be fine with it.
I'll do it for you,
I've
Gene.
had guys do it before.
Yeah, I prefer that.
I'll
No,
come
it's not
out,
because
Gene.
I don't want a lady look. It's like I think my butt crack is kind of gross, and I'd be too embarrassed to show it to a woman.
I think King B and I could do it for you.
I shave his back for him, so it kind of owes me.
You shave his back?
Just with like clippers.
Yeah, quickest way to
Trim.
dull a straight razor.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on there. I don't have.
I feel
back
like
hair.
he should
does.
wax it.
He thinks going to the gym is GAY, so I don't think he's going to be going anywhere to get waxed.
Oh, I mean, waxing is great. I mean, it helped, everybody
There's a
should
lot
get
of
wax.
wax.
But yeah, steam your scrotum. I think it'd be great. I think that you should
steam
do
it
it.
up.
I think you should, get a humidifier at home.
Hey, it's
drop
Florida.
it in
You're
front
already
of
steaming
it.
your scrotum every day.
Throw a towel over it. Put some herbs in there and steam that motherfucker.
I like the
think.
towel idea. I'm gonna try that.
Well, that's
I'll
what
get
they
back.
do. So like the Yanni steam.
Oh, they
you
squat
sit-
over it. Okay.
you don't squat. You don't squat for like 30 minutes.
I thought you kind of squat
It's
over
a
it and you put a
chair
towel.
with
What is
like
this,
a
the
hole
Peshawar
in it.
region? What the fuck?
It's like a chair with a hole in it, and like the steamy parts underneath, and you have a robe, and you sit on top of it, and you
Is
get
it scented steam? Can I get a
so there are herbs and different things in it. So yes, it's scenty.
like a cinnamon or peppermint?
No,
awful.
who wants their vagina to smell like a peppermint?
I don't know. Maybe the holidays.
It's not. No, there's not like a Christmas themed or an autumnal.
I want a pine
steam
scent. A
flavor.
pine scent to bring in the new year.
It's like rose hips or lavender or
Of
it's like
course.
aromatherapy.
Yeah.
Patchouli.
All right, I'll report back to everybody.
All right.